bit nervous. Ooh, this is new. This is different. This is. Ooh. So, hello and welcome to the first ever episode of the Never Eat Pears podcast. This genuinely does feel quite odd. I'm already. I can feel myself. I'm already kind of going into. Ooh, this is a nerdy Brit video. So I've kind of got to be really animated and presented on camera, whereas no, this is just me talking. This is odd, but hopefully I'll get used to it. If some people may know, I do have a history with podcasts. I currently run the Mediocre Best podcast with my good friend, YouTube and housemate Fraser Oliver. So we do that, but a solo podcast about Doctor Who on the Nerdy Brit channel is what's happening, is what's going down. So let's just talk about what this specific episode is going to be. I'm gonna get used to doing a solo podcast. I'm gonna get used to it. So first of all, the big chunk of what this episode is gonna be is why I'm doing this podcast and what it's gonna be, and the structure and the format and where I want to see it go and all of that, cool stuff, because, I don't just kind of want to jump into a podcast and go, yo, this is what it is. Here's an episode. So, I'm going to introduce you to all. And I also think it's important, maybe, if this is your first jump into the Never Eat Pears podcast, I've already butchered it, or the Nerdy Brit channel, this is just kind of a way, get to know me a little bit. So I guess the big question is, why am I doing a podcast? And it's a question I've asked myself multiple times. Because I want to. Because I think I'm going to find it quite fun to do a podcast. Because I think when you have a channel and you make make videos, but the aim is to always, not waffle on and always keep it entertaining. But with a podcast, it's kind of the complete opposite. The aim is to always just talk and obviously make it interesting, but you're allowed to waffle and have little tangents and little segues, and that's kind of what I want to do. You see, I am very passionate about the subject of Doctor Who, and sometimes when I have a Doctor Who channel, it doesn't always feel like I'm just allowing myself to talk about Doctor Who. It's always, right, what's trendy? What's trending right now? Oh, let's talk about the 60th. Let's talk about David. Let's talk about Shooty. What's going to get views, this and that. And this podcast is kind of just a space for me to go, this is my thoughts. This is what I want to talk about this week. And I'm going to talk about it. Because I think one of the things I found on my YouTube journey is balancing many ideas, but balancing the idea at the end of the day. Right now, I don't get paid for this. I'm vaguely close to earning some form of monetization. If anyone wants to sponsor this podcast, you'd be stupid, but feel free. But I'm close to YouTube monetization, but I'm close in the sense of they'll approve me, and then I would probably make, from my experience with talking about monetization, I'll probably make 70 quid every other month, which isn't actual money. Well, it is money, but I've still got to have a job and work, and it's going to take a long time before, if anything, this becomes a vaguely helpful piece of financial, work. So it's got to feel fun. It's got to feel like I'm doing this because I love it and I enjoy it. Now, I'm not saying that I don't love it or don't enjoy it, because I'll always enjoy doing this kind of thing. I'll always enjoy talking about Doctor Who, but this is a more fun way for me to just go, what do I want to talk about within the Doctor Who universe today? And whatever happens of that happens, and it means I get a space to talk, people who want to listen get a space to listen. One of the things I have said to myself is I am going to put absolutely no pressure on how long an episode has to be. If I want to do an episode, title it the Never Eat Pears podcast as an element of that, to do it in that form of style, and it ends up being 20 minutes. I think if it's less than 20 minutes, I think calling it a podcast is just wrong. But if it's 20 minutes, I don't care. That is what the podcast can be. And then I'd be very surprised if I can talk about something within the Doctor Who universe for 3 hours, for example. But if I have a guest, like I think when I reviewed Power of the Doctor after it came out with a friend, I think that got to close to 2 hours, and I have literally zero problem with that. Like, if it's 3 hours, I don't, that's the thing, with this project, because I consider it as a project, I consider it something I want to work on and build upon, like I'm going to allude to, like, it isn't right now, but hopefully eventually, there might be people listening to this episode on audio platforms, on your Spotify's, on your Apple Podcasts, like, I'd like to put it there eventually, like, as of releasing, it won't be, but we'll have to see, but, like, I want to put effort into this and, you know, make it a cool thing, but, you know, in terms of things that I'm passionate about, you know, if it's 20 minutes, it's 20 minutes. If it's 3 hours, it's 3 hours. Because I'm always, the reasons why I'm doing this are always going to be for me and for the reasons why I want to do it, and I'm kind of okay with that. Now let's talk about some fun stuff. Let's talk about the kind of content I want to produce. I had a conversation with someone, I believe it was in my comment section, who said they never want me to be one of those YouTubers who go through and review every episode. And yes, I have done that specifically for Christmas, because, you know, everyone kind of needs a bit of Christmas cheer around Christmas. I have no regrets over producing that series. Well, I do have some, but we can get into that at a future time. One thing people do worry about is with a Doctor Who podcast is, will they devolve into just reviewing every episode? From my perspective, I won't do that, just because, like with my channel, I went through a phase of making quite a few reaction videos, and I stopped doing those mainly because there are people who can do that thing better. Same with reviewing individual episodes. There are people who have gone through them in YouTube videos. I mean, I have personally followed Council of Geeks reviews of each episode as they've gone through, whether they've been first-time reviews on the channel or their Take 2 reviews. I've always enjoyed watching those videos. I know I wouldn't be able to make those kinds of videos and be good at it. So therefore, I'm not going to do it, because there are plenty of WhoTubers and Who podcasters, and I want to, you know, put my own spin on a lot of these different things. You'll notice I'm very gestural. I kind of just do it because that's what I want. Also, you won't notice this if you're listening on audio platforms, which you might be. I'm sorry, guys. You know, or organisation, as you'll learn, isn't really my speciality. There's going to be some tangents. There's going to be some of this, some of that. Lovely stuff. So yeah, I don't think I will be reviewing every episode. One of the things that I can announce, which I'm not actually sure how much I've announced. I know on Twitter I've announced I'm doing a podcast series. I think on YouTube in the community tab I have as well. First of all, this is it. But the big part of that is my plan is over the next I think it's going to end up being so basically the plan is to review every series of Doctor Who. Now, you might think that ends up being the next 13 podcasts, but it's actually going to end up being, if I do my maths right, because I'll do each of the series, but I'll do the David Tennant specials as an extra. I'm going to be splitting up Series 7 into A and B, because with Series 6, obviously, they were aired as, like, 2 separate series, but I think, especially with the River Song arc kind of connecting through it all, Series 6 works as one series, whereas Series 7 really is the first 5 revolving around Amy and Rory, and then 7B revolving around, you know, the bits with Clara, obviously. And then obviously go through as normal, but then you've also got the Jodie Whittaker specials, which obviously I will do as kind of like the post-Flux ones. Obviously with certain Christmas specials, if they get mentioned at all, which is probably rare, because for some people it is hard to place a Christmas special within the series. For some it makes sense for them to come before, for some it makes sense for them to come after, but like kind of like with those ones, just put those together because, you know, specials, and kind of like when they've clumped up a load of specials together, that's when you can kind of like involve the Christmas ones. So you'd probably involve, oh god, the next Doctor within the David Tennant Christmas specials, and obviously the End of Time within those, because those all make sense together. So if I've done my maths right, that was what will be the next 16 episodes, which I think is quite cool, personally. Now, I know some people might be there thinking, oh, that's a little bit hypocritical, you're not reviewing episodes, but you're going to review series. First of all, I think it encourages conversations, because one of the things I want to do with this podcast is have conversations with Doctor Who creators and Doctor Who fans. Like, with the next few episodes where I'm reviewing each series with a new, different creator or just fan. That's what I want to do, just have discussions, and talking about specific series is a great way to do that. You know, also just make some connections through the podcast. That'd be really nice. Like, I'm literally today also recording the second episode with a really cool guest from the WhoTube space. So you'll see that episode next week. But yes, I'm reviewing series 1 with a very cool guest, which I'm really excited for. I can't lie. So I know some people might go, you've said you won't review specific episodes, but you're reviewing series. But I think in terms of, you know, this podcast creating a whole picture of my thoughts on different elements within the Whoniverse, which is, I've always thought was a bit of a wanky name, but, you know, we'll work on it. Having specific thoughts on series, you can kind of really go into depth with, like, Doctor performances and arcs, and then as you kind of go into other different subsections, you kind of end up touching on little reviews for episodes, and so you kind of do episode reviews without doing episode reviews, and that's the way I've decided to go. One of the things, if you are listening and there are specific episodes you want to see of like long form pieces of content, or just like general ideas of little things you think work and don't work on Doctor Who podcasts, let me know, because that's the one thing. I don't want to live in this echo chamber of, this is my Doctor Who podcast, and I make all the decisions, and, you know, like, if there are things that I do that don't work for you, let me know, because, obviously, you know, I'm going to have opinions, and opinions might not work for you. If there are certain things that I do, or talk about, or little tropes that you like or don't like, let me know, because I want to know. That was a really waffly way of basically saying, I would like some feedback, please. But overall, probably what this pod is going to be is, you know, it's probably going to be a lot of the stuff that you might see in, like, shorter form content made into longer form content. You know, like, there's lots of, like, rankings people can do, and, like, I think I just find those sorts of rankings more interesting if I do them in, like, longer form. Because, obviously, alongside this, like, there are shorter form content bits I want to make, obviously continuing here on the channel, and longer form bits of content. So for me, it's just working out, especially like through this series as well, and developing as the main podcast host, what I want it to be, and which bits work for short form content, which bits work for long form content, just what works in general, and what do I want the podcast to be going forward. Also, just like a quick little note on like the Nerdy Brit channel, I know I haven't been uploading for a while. This isn't me saying that the Never Eat Pears podcast is taking over the channel. Like, in an ideal world, I'd be producing, you know, a video and a Never Eat Pears podcast a week. Even though that's something I wanted to touch on, this isn't going to be every Friday an episode drops. It'll be like, no, if I want a week off from the podcast but I make 2 videos, then that's how it is. If I make, you know, 4 videos and a podcast, lucky you bloody love it. But yeah, so at the moment I'm taking a little bit of a break. Obviously this is kind of like my first podcast back, but I am going back to making short form videos as well. I have to admit, if you want a bit of an insight into my personal life, I'm an acting student. I did a play, needed a week off of the play, decided, you know when you always take a week off from a certain thing, and like it turned into 2 weeks, and it turned into 3 weeks? That's kind of what happened. That makes it sound like I regret it. I don't regret it, because I really do think that break was necessary for me. I just really needed a wee bit of time off. I can't lie, just to you know, especially because with the Christmas review series I did, I kind of like I was so far behind on it that I was literally like reviewing Christmas specials, obviously watching them as well, in like January. And that was just, that just burned me out a little bit, especially as that series just didn't do very well, which is okay, we can accept, but Obviously, my mindset was, I've started the series, so I've got to continue it, and then when you don't, obviously, when you don't really reap the rewards of what feels like a lot of hard work at the time, yeah, that isn't fun. So I just decided, you know what, take a little bit of a break. I think also what this podcast does in a cool way is it kind of like takes away like the middle ground of my content and what I want to do to shape the channel going forward. Because obviously when I just make like short form videos on the Nerdy Brit channel, sometimes they're like really cool, like really like big effort like videos, and sometimes it's just me sat in front of a camera talking in an edited format for 7 minutes. And I'm there thinking what this can do is means I get to focus on the bigger videos when it makes sense, and then I can make more waffly podcasts talking about bits of news and things that come up. And that's not saying I'm never going to make a short form video about news, and that's not saying I might, you know, sometimes decide, you know, let's make a big edited fully cool podcast. That would be a surprise, because that would be a lot of admin, and if people know me, they know I don't really do admin, but that is, at the end of the day, that's the plan. This podcast is a cool space for me to kind of like, you know, do what I want and do what I fancy, and yet it is also just like a way to like shape the Nerdy Brit channel a bit better, meaning if you see, you know, like a 5, 6, 7, 8 minute video, you go, oh, this is going to be a really cool bit of Doctor Who content, and then, you know, it also sprinkles in with some nice podcasts, because podcasting is cool. So yeah, that's kind of what the podcast is, what I want it to be. I hope you're excited. If you've got any other questions, leave them in the comments. I can, you know, answer them in there. If I feel like they deserve like a bit of a portion of a podcast, I can do that. I just hope people are excited to get on board, get involved, and I hope they enjoy it. They enjoy it, and hopefully this is a cool process that we can see evolve together. Now, I just thought it would be fun, like I said earlier, to talk a little bit about my history with Doctor Who, my history where I am today. So, as my parents have told me, the first series of Doctor Who I watched live was Series 4. Now, I would have been 6 at the time, so you can argue my parents made a questionable decision in letting me watch Doctor Who as a 6-year-old, but, you know, I found that really cool. But I think it was Series 5 when I first properly began, like, engaging, as in terms of, like, I was actively watching it. Maybe not considering myself a fan, because I don't think at 6 or 7 years old you consider yourself really a fan of anything, but obviously in 2008 I watched Series 4 live, obviously watched the David Tennant specials as they were happening, and I think by the time we got back to Series 5, as my dad, and we'll get onto this, was like a massive fan, like he saw that I was enjoying it and took me through the entirety of the modern series. Now, I have watched a lot of Classic Who. I couldn't tell you exactly how much. I genuinely don't think I could go story by story and go, I have seen that, I haven't seen that, because to be fair, I haven't watched Classic Who in a while. And I also couldn't tell you at what point in my journey I can't tell you at what point of me watching Doctor Who did I see that specific thing, but I can tell you that, weirdly, I don't know if people will be surprised about this or not, like, I'm pretty sure I have watched every 3rd Doctor story and every 4th Doctor story, mainly because, like, my family as a whole can get into modern Who, but, like, it's really my dad that, like, grew up with Classic Who and, like, really loves that. So me and him used to watch it a lot, and his favourite era was, like, 3rd going into 4th. And, like, my favourite classic Doctor is actually Jon Pertwee. I'm not sure a lot of people know that, but I have a lot of love and nostalgia for Jon Pertwee and that era, like Jon Pertwee with Jo. I think a lot of that is really great stuff, and, you know, it's quite a cliche answer, but I really do love Tom Baker. And, like, I think one of these things, and, you know, this is just me going on a little side track, as we will quite a lot. People who criticise people for liking the most popular option are a bit stupid sometimes, because I get it, like, if if your answer to everything was just the most basic option, yes, probably get an opinion. But I feel like, for example, yes, one of my favourite classic Doctors is Tom Baker. Yes, my favourite modern Doctor is David Tennant. I don't think those things are necessarily bad within themselves. Sometimes people will get a little bit critical if your favourites are the most popular opinion. I mean, my favourite classic is John Pertwee, so I guess I'm stamping my opinion there. But, you know, like, people who think David Tennant is the quote-unquote basic answer to your favourite Doctor, fuck you. Fuck you, because David Tennant is really good in the role, and I really like him, and yeah, this is me. I think another thing is my favourite Doctors, especially if you look at classic and modern, like your favourite classic one, your favourite modern one, yes, they are probably ones that I was introduced to pretty much from the off in terms of the first modern Doctors I was watching was really, obviously a bit of Christopher Eccleston, but a lot of David Tennant, and then into Matt Smith as well, and then the first few classic Doctors I was watching was, I'll say Troughton into Baker. We watched less Troughton, but I did watch quite a lot of Troughton. I'll get more into my history with Classic Who in a bit, but we'll delve into that in a bit, honestly. I don't write notes for a podcast, just because that's dull, and that restricts just kind of like the spludurgle that I kind of just want to give out into the world. That's a me choice. If you don't like it, lump it. But I actually think it's quite normal that, like, the Doctors that are my favourites are the ones that I watched first. If you think about it, for example, like, I've always seen it, like, if you read a book and then watch the film, you've always still got that imagining of, like, how the books looked, like, in your head before you watched a film. Whereas if you watch a film first, you will, like, and then go back to the book, you will always imagine it as the book version. Like, for example, I was introduced to Harry Potter via the films first. I can't control that, that was just the way I was sat down in front of a Harry Potter film before I was told, hey, this is a good book, read it. The same with Good Omens. I watched the David Tennant version before I read the book, so I can only see David Tennant, just like I can only see Rupert Grint when I read Ron in the book. And I think, well, that's a niche and slightly irrelevant example. I do think that is a similar thing compared to what things you just see first in general. When there is a character that is being portrayed currently in canonically 13 ways, but then obviously, you know, War Doctor, there are extra ways. When you've seen this character be portrayed in so many different ways, I think you latch on to the ones you do see first, because then you judge those portrayals against, obviously with some exceptions, but you judge those portrayals against the portrayal you saw first, and usually the thing you're used to is the best one. That's just a me thing as well. Like, people want to know this about me, and that's, again, one of the reasons why I want to do a podcast, is so people who enjoy my short form content get to know me a little bit better. I am very much a creature of comfort. Like, I would much rather, okay, for example, I have watched Doctor Who Series 7, I'd say, about 4 times. I think I've seen Doctor Who Series 4, my favourite series of Modern Who and of all Who, and it's what I consider to be the best season of television of all time. I've probably seen Doctor Who Series 4 about 15 times, and I'd much rather rewatch it. That's a bad example, because obviously I much prefer Season 4 anyway to Series 7, but what I'm saying is I'm definitely a creature of comfort. I would much like I go through phases of, if people have Spotify, they'll know that there's like an on-repeat playlist. I find myself listening to the on-repeat playlist, aka the 30 songs I already listen to the most, just as comfort. Because I haven't got anything diagnosed. I don't really know what goes on in my own head sometimes, but, like, I am very much a creature of comfort. I like repetition. I like feeling safe. Like, I would much rather, for example, watch a film I already know I'm going to like than watch something I've never seen before. I don't know what that is. I'm giving you a lot of all, like, cool medical diagnosis-y, like, into my brain stuff. And this is also a massive tangent, but that's kind of me. I'm a creature of comfort. I like what I like, and I like what I know. And obviously, you know, like, then there are exceptions to that, you know, like, I'll watch every new MCU film when they come out, and I'll watch, but even then, I think that's why I latch on to Doctor Who so much, because it's new stuff from a franchise that I already know, not necessarily what to expect from, but I know the vibe. I know I'm going to enjoy it and embrace it, and I want to know more. It took me until the final season to get into Game of Thrones, which was a big mistake. Like literally, Stranger Things came out, and I literally only started watching it after there were 4 seasons of it. And this is gonna get a bit controversial. I'm not massive in Stranger Things. I maybe have to grow up with it. Season 4 was good. Season 2 was terrible. Seasons 1 and 3 were very mediocre. Mediocre at best. Subscribe down below. I'm plugging on a podcast. I told you this was going to be absolute waffle. So let's go in chronological order, because I think my journey through the modern series is pretty obvious. You know, when I started at 4. Continued to watch I kind of watched the specials at the same time I watched series 1 through 3, and then kept going live. I think I also watched the Sarah Jane Adventures at quite a young age. I think I watched the last couple of seasons of that very close to when they were broadcast. Torchwood is something I've rediscovered in later years. Children of Earth is one of the best things that the Doctor Who universe has ever made. So in terms of the classic era, as I've said, I know I haven't watched everything. I think I've watched quite a lot of the first Doctor and second Doctor. I think a bit more of Patrick Troughton, to be fair. A lot of that is because I think some people get phased with the first and second Doctor because so many episodes are missing. My dad, I don't know if people know this, but like, obviously some episodes have been recreated through animation. I don't know enough about this, but I think every episode has been recreated in the form of, like, a picture they've been edited together, so a picture will come up on screen, and because I think every episode exists in terms of, like, people have like recorded them on in a radio way, so all of the audio for every episode exists, and then I used to watch old episodes where pictures would come up and the lines would come up, and I'm not even sure how legal or professional they were, but I've watched a lot of them, so I've watched a lot of things that I can watch. There is a very good chance I've watched all of first and second Doctor in one way or another, but I couldn't say that for definite. I think I've got to be honest. I know obviously some people sometimes don't like it when you criticise things that things can't control. I think, yes, black and white Doctor Who, and then obviously when a lot of the episodes you have to watch through some weird format that wasn't how they were initially broadcast, yes, that is a big barrier to entry. I still enjoy a lot of it. I still think there's some really great Doctor Who within those first couple of stories. I really like Patrick Troughton's Doctor. I've always thought he was great. I also like that he was out of the modern era. He came back time and time again, and I think I think as an actor, if the actor wants to come back to the show, that kind of makes me appreciate them more. People can disagree with that. Again, I don't care. Well, I kind of do. That sounds weird. I don't want people to think I'm completely callous over people's opinions. I do care about your opinion, but if you disagree with me in a really negative way, I don't really care. In terms of negative, aggressive, not a negative opinion. Sometimes you'll find the way I explain my opinions is through waffle and through just trying to get it right and hope I've done okay. So yeah, I hope you back me on that. Like I've said, I believe I've seen all of the third and fourth Doctors, and this is for me, especially because I grew up on it. I've got so much nostalgia for a John Pertwee or a Tom Baker episode. I love them, and we can delve further into that. That's the thing. I'm not sure I'm going to discuss Classic Who tons and tons and tons on this podcast. just because I'm not really sure that's what people want to see. I'm not sure enough people have seen Classic Who for me to be interested, but I could do some Classic Who delvings if people wanted me to. Let me know in the comments below. In terms of 5, 6, and 7, obviously I've seen the TV movie, so I've seen 8. I've seen. I honestly reckon, and this is something I want to rectify. I am going to go on a Classic rewatch. Hopefully soon, and obviously that could be cool. That like discussing my journey with Classic Who on the podcast is something I'd be very interested in doing if people want to see that. But I think Classic Who was more like, a lot of the times what my dad would do would be like, oh, do you want to watch Doctor Who? What kind of vibe would you like? Being quite a bit of a Dalek fan, for example, especially as a kid, I'd go, oh, a Dalek episode. So I think I've seen a lot of, like, the bigger stories, like, obviously, like, Remembrance of the Daleks, and, so if there's a Dalek story, I'll have seen it. If there's a Cyberman story, I'll have seen it. Oh, and there'll also be, like, other random ones where my dad will go, oh, that is good, let's watch it. But I think I've seen a lot less in this era, especially due to the fact of, like, you know, just, like, as a kid, like, you're just there, like, oh, you know, you don't really get much choice. You just go, oh, yeah, you like that one? Let's do it. And obviously, my dad was just less fond of the 5th, 6th, and 7th Doctor, so we just watched it less. That isn't a necessary criticism of them. Sometimes I have just, like, done rankings and just, like, kind of, like, based it off. I've done quite a lot of unfair rankings. Like, obviously, like, 10 years ago, if you were to do a Doctor Who ranking and, like, you know, Colin Baker and Sylvester McCoy were kind of, like, pretty much at the bottom, like you were kind of looked upon as a bit odd for, like, not doing that, but now people have gained more appreciation for that. I haven't, just because I haven't watched enough of them. That leads me on to Big Finish, because obviously a lot of people, especially Colin Baker and Paul McGann, are the two big ones where people seem to really... Those are the two where if Big Finish for them didn't exist, a lot of people would like their Doctors less. Not in a bad, not in a bad way. Just that their eras, especially obviously, Paul McGann only got one story. Colin Baker's TV era is littered with behind the scenes controversy and just not great storytelling from what I've heard and, to be fair, what I've seen. But Big Finish has really lifted them. I have not seen enough Big Finish for it to ever have changed my opinion on anything. Did I say seen Big Finish? Because listen, because you can't see something that is just an audio-based drama. My experience with Big Finish is I have listened to stuff. I haven't even scratched the surface with Big Finish. If it's a David Tennant based audio, I have likely done it, seeing as I will take any David Tennant Doctor Who I can, because I am a massive, massive fan. You know, people do, like, edits of, like, well, it's like a big fan that just goes round, you call yourself a big fan. That's funny. That's comedy. Unfortunately, I'm not going to do that, because I'm not editing this podcast, apart from just cutting off the start and end of clips, because I've decided that's the easiest way to do it. Well, that was very coincidental. Just as I'm doing a big rant about editing, my SD card decides to not want to record any more footage because it's full up. That's one of the things I should probably mention. I am not a good YouTuber in terms of the technical stuff. I genuinely am not, in terms of editing, in terms of, you know, like, equipment, all of that stuff, in terms of, like, SD card management and all that shit. Like, I am terrible at it. It's something I need to work on, because I think that's the thing. I've always thought, you know what, you have potential to be an alright Doctor Who YouTuber. You just need to actually put in the effort into the boring stuff, if that makes sense, into, like, the editing, into the organisation, into, like, the scheduling. You put the effort into the hard stuff. Which I will probably do at some point if they start paying me to do it, because at the moment it's just a hobby, and therefore I find it fun. So therefore I just mainly want to do the fun stuff. But I'm okay with that. So Big Finish. Yeah, I've watched bits here and there. Again, it was a lot of, with my dad, oh, we've got a long car journey, would you like to put on some Big Finish? What would you like? Oh, like, yes, 10-year-old me was probably like, oh, got any Dalek stories? Honestly, if it's a Dalek story from Big Finish, I've probably listened to it. I love Daleks. I did a little video doing a Dalek collection. I might do an entire podcast on it just because honestly, I'm a sucker for a Dalek-based bargain. I just love them. Like these, like the classic these little mini ones. I know there's the I keep seeing it when if I go into like a HMV or something. They've got like what's called like the Dalek Parliament set, which like the little eagle moss like 10 Dalek designs, which I'm probably gonna buy at some point because I just really want it. So I probably will be getting that. That's the thing. I'm just a sucker in general for a bit of Doctor Who merch. I want to get a bit of a bigger Doctor Who merch collection going, but I've got some cool pieces, and it kind of makes for a cool little set. Yeah, we can show off the set. Look, we've got the bloody Jadoon over there, big Cybermen, got a couple of other Cybermen. It's Daleks, aren't they? I think Daleks are like a cool little, like the classic like little British trooper Victory of the Daleks one. Like I just that is my cup of tea in terms of Dalek collections. I told you guys, this podcast is going to be utter waffle. And not just this podcast, like every podcast. Like if you can cope with this, like feel free. I think why this might not always be a solo podcast is sometimes there are certain subjects that just work better with discussion. Like guess what? Sometimes there are certain topics that aren't just benefited by just the sound of my voice droning on. I think in terms of my stance on most Doctor Who, I think I've explained my journey through the classic series and what I really like and I don't like. I'm a massive RTD fan. I'm buzzing he's coming back. I know there are some people who aren't. There are some massive Chibnall stands that don't really rate it. I love RTD1 and I'm incredibly excited for RTD2. The Moffat era, because I'd say it's a big departure from RTD. I think I grew into it. It wasn't something I was immediately a fan of, but I think yeah, I've grown into it. People these days seem to be a lot more. I get most of my opinions and like the way I think of how most Doctor Who fans think from Twitter, which probably isn't the best idea. I always thought that Matt Smith was more popular than Capaldi. Apparently, Capaldi is pretty much seen as the most popular Doctor, which I didn't really realise. But yeah, like fair play to him. I've always been more of a Matt Smith than a Peter Capaldi fan. But I am currently trying to rediscover the Capaldi era. So we'll see. I really like Capaldi's Doctor. I sometimes think Stephen Moffat ran out of ideas, and I'm not as hot on some of the things that people really love. Like people seem to really love Series 8, and I've always found Capaldi's characterization just be a little bit too un-Doctor-like, and then he grows into it, but then the writing sometimes is a bit naff. In terms of Chibnall, I've got to be honest. I really like some stuff. I think it's the weakest of the three eras. It's one of those things where I don't want to say this podcast isn't for Chibnall stans. Please stay with me. I'm going to clarify what I mean by that. I think there are some fans of the Chibnall era that a lot of what I say on this podcast is going to irritate them, because there are some things in the Chibnall era I'm going to say I don't like and I'm going to criticise, because this is a Doctor Who podcast about my opinion, and but I think I'm always there for just openness and discussion and just general positivity. Like I have made videos in the past that I regret that just are like, I've made a couple of like slating Chibnall videos, and I regret them because I don't think they spread the positivity that I as a creator wants to spread. But I do hold a lot of those opinions that a lot of his Doctor Who doesn't work for me, especially now that his era's been wrapped up. I think you look at his era and you go, there were some steps forward. I think we've gone backwards as a show. And that's why I'm very excited for RTD2. Because I know I'm not one of these people that are going, oh, RTD's here to save the show. But then I'm also there like, has the show gone off the rails a little bit? Yes. Do I believe RTD is the right man to get them on track? Yes. and I don't think that in itself is a statement that should be vilified, personally. I think that's going to wrap this up. Again, if people have questions or cool things they want to know or anything like that, please let me know in the comments below, and I am very good at replying to every comment, so I'll do that for you all. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe. I say please subscribe, but I am slightly baffled if you're watching this podcast and aren't subscribed. Especially if you sat through the entire thing. But please subscribe. 1,000 subscribers pretty soon would be bloody lovely. And with that, thank you. And if you've stayed till the end of this podcast, I can reveal to you that next week, episode 2 of the Never Eat Pears podcast, myself and Faries are gonna be reviewing series 1. Me and Faries. Faries is gonna come on the Nerdy Brit channel. Fucking hell, nerdy? Yeah, Faries gonna come on the Nerdy Brit channel. I think that's really cool. See you next week.